I'm Michelle, 35 years old, the youngest daughter in our family. Today was supposed to be a celebration, a family party at our Fort Worth mansion to honor my late mother's investment legacy. As I raised my glass, my heart full of memories, my older sister stood up, her lips curling into a chilling smirk. "Pack your bags, loser," she announced, her voice slicing through the room like a blade. My dad and his new wife, someone I'd sacrificed everything to care for, clapped and raised their glasses as if her words were the perfect gift for the occasion. My stomach dropped, betrayal burning in my chest. I forced a smile, excused myself, and stepped outside into the cool Texas air. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone and made one quick call. 10 minutes later, the screaming started and the truth began to unravel. Before we dive deeper into this wild family drama, I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Drop a comment below. It's amazing to see how far this story reaches, and your support means the world to me. Our family in Fort Worth was never simple. My dad, William, a retired investor who built a small fortune in real estate, was the rock we all leaned on. He spent decades flipping properties across Texas, turning our 3-story mansion into a symbol of his success. My mom was his college sweetheart, the one who balanced his ambition with warmth, filling our home with laughter and Sunday dinners. She was healthy, vibrant, managing their investments with a sharp mind until 5 years ago when she passed away. The doctors called it cancer, but her decline was so rapid, so unnatural, it never sat right with me. Dad crumbled after that, forgetting to eat, letting the house fall into chaos, his once sharp mind clouded by grief. I was 30 then, teaching 3rd grade in New York, living in a tiny apartment with a view of the Hudson. My life was full lesson plans, coffee dates, a steady relationship with a guy named Tom. But everything changed with a call from my sister. She's a director at a tech firm in California, always too busy for family. "Dad's a mess," she said, her tone sharp and accusing. "He's not eating, the house is falling apart. Someone needs to step up, and it's not going to be me." She had her own life, her fancy condo, her husband, her perfect kids. The responsibility fell on me, the only one without those ties. I took a leave of absence, packed a bag, and moved back into my childhood bedroom in Fort Worth. It was supposed to be temporary, a few months to get Dad back on his feet. But his grief wasn't just emotional, it aged him. He'd forget appointments, misplace keys, and sometimes stare blankly during conversations. I couldn't leave him like that. So I quit my job, broke things off with Tom, who refused to move to Texas, and stayed. The mansion mom's pride became my responsibility. Every room held memories, the dining table where she taught me to budget, the porch where we'd sip lemonade, the office where she kept her investment ledgers. A few months after I settled in, my sister called again. I was wiping down the kitchen counter, still cluttered with Dad's unopened mail, when her name lit up my phone. "You're wasting your life," she snapped, not bothering with a hello. "Dad doesn't need a babysitter. You're just clinging to that house for the inheritance." Her words stung like she was spitting on everything I'd given up. I tried to explain Dad's confusion, his unsteady hands, the way he'd call me by Mom's name sometimes, but she cut me off. "Get a grip, Michelle. I'm not dropping my career to play nurse. Figure it out." The call ended with her hanging up, leaving me staring at the phone, anger and doubt twisting in my gut. She hadn't visited in over a year, hadn't called Dad in months, but somehow I was the one doing it wrong. My only ally was my dad's younger brother, Uncle Robert. He lived an hour away in Dallas, running a small accounting firm. Despite his busy schedule, he'd drive down every other weekend, bringing takeout and checking on Dad. "You're doing the right thing," he told me one evening, his voice steady as we sat on the porch. "Your sister's too caught up in her own world to see it." He'd noticed Dad's decline too, the forgetfulness, the way he'd repeat stories. "Keep an eye on things," he said. "Something doesn't add up." Then there was Betty, our neighbor from across the street. She'd known Mom for decades back when they'd swap recipes and gossip over coffee. One afternoon while I was mowing the lawn, she wandered over, her eyes soft with nostalgia. "Your mom was so full of life," she said, leaning on her cane. "Always talking about her investments, how this house was her legacy for you kids." She paused, her brow furrowing. "Funny thing, though, that nurse who took care of her at the end before she got so sick, she came by a few times asking about your mom's will. Said she was just curious about estate planning, but it fell off to me." Her words hit like a punch. That nurse, I realized, was the same woman Dad would later marry. It wasn't a coincidence. My mind raced, piecing together fragments: Mom's sudden decline, the way she'd been fine 1 month and bedridden the next. Betty's story wasn't just gossip. It was a crack in the facade, a clue that something darker was at play. I thanked her, my voice tight, and went inside, my heart pounding with a mix of dread and determination. This wasn't just about Dad anymore. I had to dig deeper for Mom's sake. That phone call from Lisa accusing me of clinging to the inheritance lit a fire in me. I couldn't shake Betty's words about the nurse asking about Mom's will, but before I could dig deeper, another call came months after I'd settled back in Fort Worth. Lisa's voice was cold, almost clinical. "Dad's getting worse, Michelle. He can't live alone. You're there, deal with it." She didn't offer to help, didn't ask about Dad, just hung up after another jab about me wasting my potential. Her words echoed in my head, but Dad's condition was what kept me up at night. He'd forget to take his meds, leave the stove on, call me by Mom's name. I knew then I wasn't going back to New York. I called my school, resigned my teaching position, and ended things with Tom. He wanted a city life, not a caregiver's burden in Texas. I packed away my dreams and took over the mansion Mom's legacy, with its oak-paneled study and sunlit kitchen where she'd planned investments. Managing the house was a full-time job. Bills piled up, repairs needed scheduling, and Dad's arthritis made stairs a struggle. I hired a part-time cleaner, but I handled his meds appointments and meals myself. Uncle Robert checked in often, his weekend visits a lifeline. "You're carrying too much," he said one night, handing me a coffee as we sorted Dad's paperwork. "But you're all he's got." His words were kind, but they underscored the truth: Lisa wasn't coming, and I was alone in this. About a year after I moved back, Dad met his new wife, Susan, a former nurse at his cardiologist's office. She was 55, sharp-eyed, with a warm smile that seemed rehearsed. They married within 6 months, faster than anyone expected. At first, I was cautiously hopeful. Susan cooked for Dad, drove him to checkups, even got him to join a local book club. The house felt alive again, and Dad's mood lifted. But something about her gnawed at me. She'd linger in Mom's old office, asking casual questions about the mansion's value. "This place must be worth a fortune," she'd say, her tone too light, too probing. I brushed it off, thinking I was paranoid, but then I noticed Dad's meds changing. His usual blood pressure pills looked different, smaller, a shade off. He'd get drowsy after dinner, more confused than usual, calling me sweetie like he did Mom. One evening, I caught Susan in Mom's office, rifling through a locked drawer where we kept old financial records. The deed Chuk Mom's will was in there, naming Dad as life tenant and me as heir to the mansion. I froze in the doorway, my heart pounding. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Susan snapped the drawer shut, her smile tight. "Just organizing, Michelle. You're imagining things." Her words were smooth, but her eyes darted to the side, a flicker of guilt. I didn't push she'd turn it back on me, make me feel like the intruder, but that moment was a line in the sand. I couldn't trust her. I confided in Karen, Mom's old friend from their investment club days. She came over one afternoon, her face heavy with memory. "Your mom was so sharp," Karen said, stirring her tea, But that last month when the nurse was around, she changed. Got weak confused fast. I saw that nurse swapping her pills once thought it was a mistake. Now I wonder. Her words hit like a brick. That nurse was Susan caring for Mom before she married Dad. I called Dr. Donna, Mom's former doctor, who still practiced in Fort Worth. Over coffee, she pulled Mom's old records. Her decline wasn't typical for cancer. Dr. Donna said, her brow furrowed. I flagged it then, but no one followed up. Her meds were off, wrong doses, wrong pills. She promised to dig deeper, compare them to Dad's current prescriptions. Susan's behavior grew bolder. She'd hover when I gave Dad his meds, suggesting new ones from her old nursing contacts. Dad's confusion spiked once he forgot where the garage was, a place he'd parked for 30 years. Lisa, when I called her, dismissed it. He's old, Michelle. Stop overthinking. But Uncle Robert backed me up. Watch her, he said, his voice low. If she's messing with his meds, we need proof. That night, as I locked Mom's office, Susan's words echoed, "You're imagining things." They stung because part of me wondered if I was wrong. But Karen's story, Dr. Donna's records, and that locked drawer told me otherwise. Susan wasn't just after the house, she was hiding something bigger, something tied to Mom's death. When she caught me eyeing her at breakfast, her smile was a warning. "Careful, Michelle," she said, her tone icy. "You don't want to stir up trouble." Her words weren't just a brush off, they were a threat, and I knew I had to act fast. Susan's icy warning, "Careful, Michelle," lit a spark I couldn't ignore. Her rummaging through Mom's dichook wasn't just suspicious. It was a signal something sinister was brewing. I started in Mom's old office, where I found her leather-bound journal tucked behind investment ledgers. Its pages held her final thoughts, and one entry stopped me cold. The nurse asked about the will again today. Strange. That nurse was Susan years before she met Dad. My hand shook as I read on Mom's words, hinting at unease about her meds. I needed more proof. Late that night, I used Mom's old login details still scribbled in the journal to access her email. Buried in an archived folder, I found messages between Susan and Lisa, dated 3 years before Mom's death. "The house is worth millions," Lisa wrote. "Get close to him after she's gone. I'll handle the rest." Susan replied, "I'm in. The daughter might be a problem, but I'll manage." They'd planned this from the start. I couldn't confront them yet, suspicions weren't enough. I ordered a small security camera online, the kind that blends into bookshelves, and installed it in the kitchen where Susan sorted Dad's meds. The footage was chilling Susan swapping his blood pressure pills for something else, her movements quick practiced. I saved every clip, my heart racing with each one. I reached out to Dr. Donna, who agreed to run a discreet blood test on Dad during his next visit. The results show sedatives not on his prescription, she confirmed over the phone, her voice grave. "It's the same pattern I saw in your Mom's records, unprescribed meds, wrong doses." Uncle Robert, when I showed him the footage, clenched his jaw. "We need to protect him legally," he said. "Now." I called my old college friend Cynthia, a lawyer specializing in elder law. She drove from Dallas the next day, her briefcase stuffed with documents. Over coffee in Mom's office, she drafted a healthcare proxy and a new power of attorney limiting decisions to Uncle Robert and me, revoking any prior ones. Dad signed them on a good day when his mind was clear with Cynthia and a notary as witnesses. We hid the originals in a safe at her office, keeping copies in Dad's old investment binder, a place Susan never touched. But then things unraveled. Susan caught the camera's glint one morning while grabbing coffee. "What's this?" she snapped, yanking it down. "Spying on me, Michelle? I could call the cops for invasion of privacy." Her voice was low, threatening, her eyes daring me to push back. I stayed calm, claiming it was for home security, but my pulse hammered. She wasn't just suspicious, she was dangerous. Lisa escalated things. I called her to test the waters, asking if she'd visit Dad soon. "You're out of line," she hissed over the phone. "Keep snooping and I'll sue you for harassment. Dad's fine with Susan, you're the one causing trouble." Her words cut deep, but worse was Dad's reaction. One evening, as I helped him with his meds, he looked at me confused. "Susan says you're stressed, Michelle. Maybe she's right. You don't need to hover." His words stung worse than Lisa's threats. I knew Susan was feeding him lies, but the twist came when he added, "I don't want to lose her. After your mom, I can't be alone." His voice cracked, and I saw it, a flicker of guilt. He'd suspected something about Mom's death, maybe even the meds, but buried it to keep Susan. My heart sank, torn between anger and pity. Was I fighting for him or against him? The final blow came when Dad had a bad episode. I'd swapped his tampered meds back to the originals, hoping to clear his head, but the withdrawal hit hard. One night he collapsed in the hallway, clutching his chest, disoriented. I called Dr. Donna, who rushed over and stabilized him. "It's the sedatives wearing off," she said. "His body's adjusting, but it's risky." I sat by his bed watching him sleep, doubt creeping in. Was I doing more harm than good? Had I misread everything Uncle Robert found me there, my face buried in my hands? "Trust your gut," he said, his voice firm. "Your mom knew something was wrong, and so do you. Keep going." His words pulled me back from the edge. Betty, the neighbor, gave me another piece of the puzzle. She stopped by one morning, her eyes sharp. "I saw Susan meeting some woman in a fancy car out front," she said. "They were talking about selling the house, low voices, real secretive. It had to be Lisa." I checked the camera footage from before Susan found it. Sure enough, Lisa was there, handing Susan papers, their heads bent close. My resolve hardened. They were moving fast, and I was running out of time. Then Lisa called again, her tone venomous. "I'm reporting you to Adult Protective Services," she said. "You're neglecting Dad, and I'll prove it." Her threat was a knife to my throat. If she succeeded, I could lose everything, including Dad. I had to act before she could spin her lies. The taint of betrayal was thick, but I wasn't backing down. Susan and Lisa thought they'd won, but I was ready to turn their game against them. Lisa's threat to call Adult Protective Services was a ticking bomb. I had to move fast, or I'd lose Dad and the house to her lies. The family party to honor Mom's investment legacy was my chance to expose everything. I poured my heart into it, determined to make it perfect despite the storm brewing. I spent weeks planning Mom's favorite lasagna made from her handwritten recipe, a photo album of her real estate triumphs, and a surprise gift, 2 tickets to Hawaii, where she and Dad honeymooned decades ago. I wanted Dad to feel her presence, to remember who we were fighting for, but every step felt like a race against time. I'd caught Lisa and Susan whispering in the study days before papers spread out, their voices hushed when I entered. "Just planning Dad's care," Susan said, her smile tight. I didn't buy it. Dad's confusion had worsened, forgetting names, stumbling over words, clear signs Susan was still tampering with his meds. The day before the party, I double-checked my evidence camera footage of Susan swapping pills emails between her and Lisa, plotting to sell the mansion Dr. Donna's blood test results, showing unprescribed sedatives, and Mom's journal hinting at her own tampered meds. Cynthia, my lawyer friend, had the legal documents ready, Dad's new healthcare proxy, and revoked power of attorney signed when he was clear-headed. Betty, our neighbor, confirmed seeing Lisa's car again, more hushed meetings. My stomach churned, but I kept my focus. This wasn't just about the house. It was about justice for Mom and Dad's dignity. The party day arrived, the mansion buzzing with guests. I set the table with Mom's old china-hung photos of her closing deals and placed the Hawaii tickets in a silver envelope. Lisa arrived with her husband, no kids, her eyes scanning the room like a predator. Susan fussed over Dad adjusting his tie, her performance as the perfect wife flawless. Betty and her husband, along with Karen, Mom's old friend, were there, their presence a quiet comfort. I tried to reach Lisa one last time, texting her to join me in planning Dad's future. Her reply was cold. "Don't push me, Michelle." Adult Protective Services is a call away. My blood ran cold. She wasn't bluffing. Dinner went smoothly at first. Dad smiled, reminiscing about Mom's first big sale, his eyes bright despite the fog of meds. I stood to give a toast, my voice steady, ready to honor Mom. Then Lisa stood tapping her glass, her smirk identical to that night in my memory. A toast to Mom's legacy, she began, her tone dripping with triumph. "This mansion's a burden for Dad, too big, too costly. Susan and I have decided it's time to sell and move him to a top-tier care facility." She pulled out a document, waving it like a trophy. "Dad's given me power of attorney. So Michelle, pack your bags, loser. It's time to move on." The room erupted in applause. Susan beaming, Dad looking dazed, clapping weakly. My heart pounded, rage mixing with dread. This was their ambush planned to humiliate me. I excused myself, my legs shaking, and stepped outside. I dialed Cynthia. "It's happening," I whispered. "Get here now." She was 10 minutes away with Uncle Robert and Dr. Donna in tow. I took a deep breath and returned to the dining room where Lisa was passing out papers for signatures. Susan stood behind Dad, her hand possessive on his shoulder. I raised my phone, connected it to the TV, and hit play. The screen lit up with camera footage, Susan swapping Dad's pills, her face clear. Gasps filled the room. I swiped to the emails, Lisa and Susan plotting 3 years before Mom died. "You targeted Dad for this house." I said, my voice steady, and Mom, her meds were tampered with just like his. Dr. Donna stepped forward, holding blood test results. "Unprescribed sedatives in Williams' system," she said. "Same pattern as his late wife's records." Lisa's face paled, but she scoffed. "This is absurd. You're fabricating lies, Michelle." Susan chimed in, her voice shrill. "I've only cared for him." But Karen stood, her voice trembling. "I saw you swap her pills years ago, Susan. I should have spoken up." The room fell silent. Dad's eyes widened, a flicker of clarity breaking through. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice small. Then softer, I suspected something with your mom. But I was so lonely, I couldn't face it." His admission hit like a punch, guilt and grief in his eyes. Lisa snapped, her composure cracking. "Fine. Yes, we plan to sell the house. Susan deserved a cut after playing the perfect wife." Susan lunged forward, screaming, "You promised me the penthouse, Lisa. I did everything you asked." Their voices clashed, accusations, flying guests frozen in shock. Betty shook her head, whispering to her husband. I knew something was off. Cynthia stepped in, holding the legal documents. "The power of attorney Lisa claims is invalid," she said. "William signed a new one with Michelle and Robert notarized when he was competent." Lisa's eyes blazed, but she had no defense. The screaming peaked as Susan grabbed her purse, shouting, "This isn't over," but it was. Dad's face hardened, the fog lifting. He'd seen the truth, and so had everyone else. The screaming at the party faded, but the fallout was just beginning. Susan stormed out that night, her face twisted with rage, dragging a suitcase as she hurled insults. Lisa followed, her lawyer facade crumbling, shouting empty threats about fighting in court. Dad sat slumped at the table, his hands trembling, the weight of their betrayal sinking in. His admission that he'd suspected something about Mom's death but stayed silent out of loneliness cut deeper than Lisa's words. I wanted to be angry, but seeing him so broken, I felt only resolve. This was our chance to take back our family's legacy, and I wasn't letting go. The next morning, Cynthia filed for an emergency protective order to block any property sales or financial withdrawals by Lisa or Susan. She worked fast, her legal precision a lifeline. With Dr. Donna's blood test results confirming unprescribed sedatives in Dad's system, and the camera footage of Susan tampering with his meds, we had enough to push for criminal charges. Cynthia presented the emails, Mom's journal, and Karen's testimony about Susan's actions years ago to the district attorney. The case was airtight. Susan took a plea deal to avoid trial, 3 years probation, a restraining order barring her from contacting Dad, and community service. She left Fort Worth shortly after rumors swirling she'd moved to Nevada. Good riddance. Lisa's punishment was harsher. The investigation uncovered she'd siphoned $30,000 from Dad's accounts over 2 years disguised as consulting fees for her firm. She faced charges for financial elder abuse, risking her career and reputation. Dad tried calling her once, hoping for an explanation, but she hung up blaming me for ruining everything. That was the last we heard from her. Unlike the sister in other stories who might have come back, Lisa didn't. She chose her pride over family, and Dad, his heart heavy but clear, let her go. He filed for divorce from Susan, citing fraud. The judge, appalled by the evidence of medication tampering, granted it, swiftly voiding any claims Susan had to the mansion. 3 months later, Dad was a different man. With Susan's drugs out of his system, his confusion lifted. His arthritis still slowed him down, but he walked the mansion's halls with purpose, his memory sharper than it had been in years. I hired a part-time caregiver, Mrs. Lopez, to help with his meds and appointments, giving me breathing room. Uncle Robert moved closer, buying a condo 10 minutes away. He'd stop by for coffee, swapping stories with Dad about their old investment days. Betty remained a constant, her daily check-ins, a reminder of the community we still had. Karen visited too, sharing memories of Mom that kept her spirit alive. Dad and I took that Hawaii trip 6 months after the party. We stood on the beach where he and Mom honeymooned, watching the sunrise paint the ocean gold. He spoke softly, sharing stories I'd never heard, how Mom negotiated her first deal, her laugh, when they danced under the stars. "She'd be proud of you," he said, his voice thick. "You fought for her for this house when I couldn't." His words were a balm healing wounds I hadn't named, but they also carried a weight. His silence about Mom's death, his fear of loneliness, had nearly cost us everything. I understood it, but forgiveness wasn't reconciliation. Some bridges stay burned. This ordeal taught me hard truths. Greed can twist even family ties, turning love into a weapon. Lisa and Susan saw the mansion as a paycheck, not Mom's legacy. But more than that, I learned to trust my instincts. Betty's offhand comment, Mom's journal, the odd pills, they were clues I could have ignored, but didn't. Dad's silence showed me even good people can falter when fear takes hold. His choice to hide his suspicions about Mom's death wasn't malice, but it enabled harm. That complexity hurt, but it made the lesson clearer. Love demands vigilance. If you see something wrong, meds changing, secret meetings, odd bank transfers, act. Check prescriptions, call a lawyer, talk to neighbors. Those steps can save a home, a life, even a memory. I'm not saying it's easy. Standing up to family, especially when they're all you have, feels like tearing yourself apart, but the truth is worth it. This house, Mom's legacy, still stands because I listened to my gut. It's not just brick and mortar, it's where she taught me strength, where Dad found his way back. If you've faced betrayal like this, or fought for someone you love, know you're not alone. The pain is real, but so is the power of doing what's right. I hope my story reminds you to stay sharp, to protect what matters, and to never let greed win. Thank you for listening to my story. It's been a journey, and sharing it helps me heal. If this resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment, share your own experiences, or just say hi. Your support keeps these stories alive, and I'm grateful for every one of you.